So, who used school lunch breaks to buy fags and booze in town? It was Matthew.
Who'd have thought, you know, down the hole we used to go. Well, how would you feel about your kids being kept in school over lunch break? Our Children's Minister, Kevin Brennan, thinks pupils under 16 would be better off locked in at school rather than roaming town centres looking for junk food and smoking tabs. And I think he's got a point. Keeping kids on the school premises for the whole day just might keep them safer. But with truancy rates at record levels, 60,000 kids bunking off school every day, you have to wonder how they'd manage it. Guards on the school gates. Even more troubling, though, are the number of parents who are dead against Kevin Brennan's idea. Apparently, lots of mums and dads reckon locking kids in school would take away their choice as far as food is concerned and would also rob them of any sense of personal responsibility. So are kids' civil liberties really more important than their safety? Wouldn't you rather want to know where your kids were during the school day than have them roaming the streets, Janet?
Absolutely. I have to say I'm shocked that they're allowed out. I haven't really spotted them round our way, so maybe Hammersmith and Chiswick schools have a different policy. But certainly, when I was at school, back in the antediluvian days, it was a privilege that was to be earned in the sixth form leaving. And even then, you had to sign out and sign back in again, you know. And actually, I have a feeling it was after we'd had lunch. We got to the front of the queue for the first time in 5 years, but after that, you could go out and goodness knows what, wander off to the bookshop.
Would you ever have a problem with your kids being locked in over lunch? What would you be your preference? To have them kept in school or allowed to leave?
Kept in, because I don't regard it as being locked in either. Right. I regard it as part of the school day, and I think the school lunch is part of the school day. And I've heard
even if they don't like it, I don't like it.
Well, I heard this morning one of the professors who'd done the survey on what children are eating, saying, of course, the problem is, you know, that when they get into the canteen, it's too crowded and they don't like what's on offer. And I thought, well, that hasn't changed. You know, it was always like that. Yeah. But that is part of the school day. It is not, after all, a restaurant in the middle of the day where you get to choose your starter and your pudding from a different hymn sheet. You know, I
just find it very hard to believe that kids that don't like school lunch are going to walk into town to choose a really healthier option. They're going to walk into town and choose junk.
Well, yeah, and that hasn't changed either, because when we left school, you know, the first thing a lot of us would do was go down the pick and mix, you know, because that's kind of what you do. And I think children do have an enormous appetite for all the wrong things. Yeah. Of course, mostly 30 years ago, people grew up without the huge weight problems that we're seeing today, and I think there is something in the fact that there isn't enough sport in school. But yeah, it's not locking.
Lock them in over lunch?
Well, it's not locking them in, Matthew.
Well,
the reason why I wasn't on that list is that we weren't allowed out at lunchtime.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't need guards because we weren't allowed, so we didn't go out because we were fearful of the sanctions that our headmaster or our teachers would give us, which kids don't seem to give a damn about these days. I find it very frustrating that parents, my kids want choice. Kids don't need choice. Kids need guidelines until they're adult to make their own choices. And I find it very frustrating that these ridiculous parents that demand these things.
That's what the schools must feel like.
Well, also, these schools, Matthew, that we're paying for as well, by the way. We're paying for a vast expense.
Particularly me, with no children.
Well, OK, well done, Mr. Infertile.
Tick-tock.
He's too old. Matthew's too old, we can relax. But no, if the facts are to be believed, if you're eating junk food, it limits your ability to concentrate, to learn, to therefore get the education that's given to you for free. Plus, it makes the people obese. We have this huge problem in the NHS.
Even the food aside, so really knife crime has dominated the front pages. Your kids are going to be safer at school, aren't they?
So it's eminently sensible by this minister, and it's pathetic that the parents would be against it.
Tracy Ann?
I totally agree. I mean, we were never allowed out at lunchtime, nor did we expect to, and the idea of it impinging on our personal choice was by the by. And I agree with Janet, the school dinners is very much a part of the school day.
Even if the kids don't like it?
You get what you're given, or you bring a packed lunch, or you sort it out for yourself on the way to school, but, you know, you stay in school. And I think, absolutely, you don't want children roaming out. It's a dangerous world out there. At least know that for 8 hours or 6 hours a day, you know where your children are.
It's not a long day.
And it's a privilege to be earned in the sixth form, because I think, hopefully, by then you've earned the right to go out and be responsible.
I'm kind of glad we all agree, and it doesn't happen that often on the show that everybody agrees, but I was astonished yesterday when I was told it was the parents that had the problem. I would have thought parents would be crying out for this, but there we go. Let's throw it open to you. Should kids be locked in at school or kept in at school over lunch break? Let's see what we have to say. Amy.
Our first caller thinks it's a bad idea to do that. It's Juliet on line 3.
Oh, excellent. Juliet, good morning. Morning.
Morning.
Oh,
I think it's a bad idea because it's another step towards the whole police state thing. It's just controlling them and watching what they're doing.
But they are children, Juliet. They are children, not adults, so they should be controlled.
Are they talking about teenage children or are they talking about young children?
They're talking about under 16s.
Under 16. 16. I mean, I think maybe at junior school age, yes, but at senior school age, I think if you have responsible parenting, it shouldn't be an issue in the first place.
But so teachers are in loco parentis, OK? So when your children are at school, their teachers are doing your job. But when your pupils leave school at lunchtime to go into town, whose parentis are they then? They're not yours because you're not there. They're not the teachers because they're at school. So you've got, in your view, 11-year-olds walking around town with no one responsible for them.
I think perhaps that's more the case of an epidemic of bad parenting and the way that the children are brought up than it is to do with necessarily being the school's responsibility. And I think...
no, Juliet, whose responsibility is the 11-year-old walking around town at lunchtime?
Well, surely shouldn't that be down to the parents and to bring...
Hang on, well, the parents have sent the children to school to be looked after in school. They go off and work, some of them, OK? So the kids then leave school to go into town. Whose responsibility are they?
Well, they should still be the parents' responsibility.
Who aren't there because they're at work?
But if they've been brought up properly, surely they're going to go back and turn up for the rest of the day.
Right, and so all children are brought up properly, Juliet?
No, unfortunately not, but that's my point, is that perhaps it has more to do with the parenting than it does to do with anything else.
But it's during your school years that you're sort of, in a way, taught that there are boundaries and that you can't just have everything that you want. And that's the years in your life where you're taught to sort of work as a group, abide by certain group rules. And if you're allowed to sort of go out from 11, 12 years old and just have your personal choice, where do you start to learn those lessons for your later life?
I think that it's a valuable learning lesson that we need to learn those things as we're growing up, so that when we're adults, we are responsible. If we have to lock our children up, then how do they learn those things?
I agree with so much of what you say, Juliet. I really do. It would be lovely, wouldn't it? All our children running free, if they want to, you know, just,
locking them up is the problem,
but
it's not locking them up. And also, school is 35 weeks of the year, 9 till 3. So it's a very small proportion of the child's life. So what Tracy says is completely correct. Children need to learn that these people, when they say something, they have to do it. That's it. And that's what growing up is about.
Okay.
So if you just expand their boundaries, they'll learn nothing.
Like I said, I'm with you guys on this one. I can understand what Juliet's saying, though. It would be lovely to have our children running free all the time. I think we've gone absolutely. I think we've gone past that point, Juliet. Thank you for the call. Let's have another.
OK, we'll go straight to Tracy then on line 1.
Tracy, good morning.
Morning.
Hi there. Do you think children should be kept in at school over lunch?
My son's school already does that. They've been doing it for a couple of years.
Why? To keep kids out of town?
Not really, no. I think it was just something they brought in. They have a less lunch break, so that they leave a bit earlier than the other schools in our area.
Right.
And it's never known any different, and I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Because you feel happy you know where your children are?
He goes to school, I know where he is at school. If he doesn't turn up and I haven't phoned the school then phone me.
Yeah.
So I know when he's at school, he's in school until they sort of release them at the end of the day.
You don't worry about his freedom of choice, Tracy?
He takes packed lunch.
So that's that bit covered.
So he doesn't, he sort of tells me what he wants in his packed lunch, and I do that for him.
Good. It seems perfectly reasonable to me, Tracy. Glad to hear it. Thank you. Amy?
OK, next caller is Gillian on line 2.
Gillian, good morning.
Hello.
Do you think kids should be locked in at school over lunch?
Well, my children are. They go to school in the morning and I know they're there all day. They've just always been, it's all I've ever known at primary school and at secondary school. The teachers are on the gates and they're not allowed out at lunchtime.
OK, and you don't feel that their civil liberties are being eroded or anything like that?
Well, no, not at all. I mean, they know how to go into a restaurant and order a meal and a fast food place because they've got weekends and evenings.
Yeah.
So there's something too, sitting down with your mates in your canteen having your dinner. We know that kids are having less dinners with their families. There's something very important, I think, about that.
Yeah, but then equally, what about the fags down there, you know, with all your mates? Talking about football.
The discipline, I think, of knowing that you're going to a place, like hopefully in your later life when you are going to work, you have to be there for a certain amount of time.
And mums clearly appreciate the security that's offered. Gillian, thank you very much for the call. Thank you for all your calls on that. And apart from Juliet, I think everybody was in favour, which is nice to hear. And although I can see her point.